Welcome to Cox Connections, seen only on Cox 9. I'm Kim Stanley, Vice President of Operations for Cox Roanoke. Stewart Mease is known as a connector. He has worked with Roanoke City in an effort to attract and retain young professionals. Now he teaches at Virginia Tech, all the while helping individual job seekers and companies find each other. Stewart is here with us today to tell us how we can use the internet and social media to either find a job or if you're an employer, find an employee. Thank you for joining us today, Stewart.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing now?
Well, your very kind introduction told a little bit about what I did at the City of Roanoke for about 3.5 years, looking at ways to attract and retain young professionals. And in that role, it was very evident to me that we had a huge gap in terms of how the next generation was connecting to the previous generation. Right. And there's so many different avenues out there. And so I really kind of got into how people were communicating and using the new technology and tried to do everything possible to connect the two and those stand in that environment. And now I work in the Pamplin College of Business at Virginia Tech as the Director of Career Services, essentially connecting students to employers. And as we know, it is a very difficult job market out there, especially for recent college graduates. And so we're trying to take some of the same things we did at the City of Roanoke and incorporate those at Virginia Tech in the business school.
You have your MBA from Virginia Tech as well.
I do. That is correct.
Right. Well, why is social media and the internet, why is that so important to young professionals today and to businesses as well?
Well, I think it's just that next phase of communication that's out there. If you look back when radios came out back in the day and then televisions came, people were concerned about what television would do. And then the fax machines came, then the personal computers came, and then email came, and now social media has arrived. And I think it's that next form of technology or communication that people are very interested about because it is so new and different, but it can do amazing things. And so it still is relatively new, and yet there's not a lot of history based off of what it can do for a person or how it could possibly even hinder a person as well. And so I think there's a lot of interest right now. A lot of companies are throwing a lot of money into how do I create my social media presence. Typically, you know, on your college campuses, they're going to be the first people to adopt the technology, and they certainly have with the Facebook. Back, you know, in terms of 3 or 4 years ago, especially when that really became rather significant. So I think it's just a bigger sense is that people are very interested in this new tool and how to use it. So there's a lot of interest in it.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming, and to your point, I think the younger generations, they've embraced it, they're clearly using it. But with the economic changes and what we're going through, we're seeing all generations out there pursuing different jobs, new careers. What is the first step for someone who's out there in the job market and they've got to use the internet, they have to use social media? What is their first step?
Well, I think the most important thing is you have to make sure you have a good online brand identity. Just like if you're going to be involved with a Rotary Club or something offline in the community, you want to make sure you have a good, positive offline brand identity. You need to have a good online brand identity as well. If you look back around the turn of the century, Monster.com was really the player in terms of connecting with employers through online with job searches. Now what we're seeing is people are kind of taking advantage of social media sites like LinkedIn.com to really build their online profile, and that is really getting a lot of it has a lot of credibility. But then even the one that everyone's talking about now is Twitter. There are additional opportunities for people to connect on Twitter specifically for jobs. There's specific niche sites like Twitter Job Search or Job Deck, which is a resource that you can use to monitor your Twitter feeds. So there's this next generation that is just really getting ready to take off. But I think it's important to note here that only about 6 to 10% of all people, job seekers, get their jobs through online resources. Now, I think it's a growing trend, but nothing is really going to supplant personal interaction, face-to-face interaction. But With the younger generation, they see everything being technology driven. They're going to be more likely to turn to it. But we have to remind them that only 6 to 10% of people are getting jobs through online avenues.
So it hasn't replaced the good networking, the face-to-face,
Right.
the interviews and things
Right.
like
And
that.
you have to remember, Kim, is that who are the people doing the hiring? They're typically the people, the baby boomers, in a lot of instances, and they may not be using the same technology, and so they may be used to using the good old-fashioned face-to-face interaction. They have that preference, and so they may not even be using the new media, but you're beginning to see them incorporate that into their overall recruiting strategy.
Right. So we're seeing people looking for employment go out there and use that, but inversely, how are employers using social media to find candidates?
Right. Well, for instance, LinkedIn, they have actually created an employer resource whereby you can have access to all 55, 60 million profiles and search it like you would something on Google, and are charging actually for that. So I think that is one way that you're seeing the social media being commercialized by the social media companies to help recruiters. I think the other thing related to recruiters and how they're using social media is really due diligence. It's amazing how much information is out there about people online, and they can maybe not do a formal background check, but they can do a character background check, and all they have to do is look at the public profiles on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, and they can find out a lot about a potential candidate that way.
So it's true, not only what we tell our children, be careful what you put out there, that really applies to everyone. Be careful what you put out there.
Absolutely. In terms of if it's jobs or if it's just for personal safety, it is very important to manage your online brand identity.
Okay. Well, we've got about a minute left. Why don't you speak to just a few common mistakes that you've seen when using social media, the internet, things like that?
For instance, Twitter, people will blast or be very derogatory towards someone, and on Twitter you can actually monitor what people are saying about you or your company, and a lot of times job seekers, individuals don't see that. The posting of messages that are inappropriate, that may be even incriminating, and they don't think anyone is actually viewing those, that's another component to it. And then the way that people interact with blogs, the way that they leave posts and the things that they say, people can track that stuff down now. It's very easy to do that. So you just have to be mindful, just like how I'm mindful of what I'm saying right now, you have to be mindful of what you're doing online as well.
Right, right. I tell you, it's a lot to think about. That new piece of equipment out there, and
yeah, this is a flip video camera. A flip video camera is what a lot of people now are doing to actually communicate themselves, to post videos about themselves and who they are, and actually producing video resumes where they can give like a 30-second commercial of who they are and why they are very very good candidate for the actual company. So it's a wonderful device here, and it costs $129, $149.
That's great. Just more things to learn, and yeah, so
Really
a lot of
is.
exciting things going on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Stewart. Coming up, a new attraction is making quite a splash in Roanoke County. Stay with us. Cox Connections continues after the break.